So where are you headed next?
Northern Ireland.
Lucky you.
Northern Ireland has established itself as a centre of excellence for screen production. A place where ambition meets craft, where local talent creates work with global reach.
You're very talented people.
Thank you.
From wild coastlines to city streets, our landscape doesn't just frame the action, it shapes it. Attracting world-class film and television productions that bring investment, opportunity and international attention, not only to our screens, but to our economy and our communities. As production grows, so does our industry. Studios expand, skills deepen, crews evolve. We are now fluent in the demands of modern, high-end content production. Ready for scale, complexity, and ambition. And beyond the big productions, something equally powerful is happening.
What do you mean?
Indigenous production is thriving.
Oh, yes! Beautiful.
Factual entertainment, documentary, animation, games, local companies gaining international recognition.
Fantastic.
Stories made here, resonating everywhere. Because a strong industry is built on strong foundations, and skills are at the heart of everything. Creating clear pathways in, clear progression through, opening doors to new voices, new perspectives, ensuring our screen sector reflects the diversity of the society it serves.
God, you're such an Egypt!
I'm not an Egypt!
Northern Ireland is rich in creative talent, and increasingly, it is our own stories, our own voices, connecting with audiences around the world.
Nightmare, isn't it? The whole thing's just awful. She was so young. I was talking about your outfit.
Our festivals and cultural cinemas broaden horizons. The Digital Film Archive preserves a moving image heritage stretching back to 1897, a reminder that our story didn't start today. And through Belfast Stories, the archive will come alive again, reconnecting people with the city's past, present, and future. Irish language and Ulster Scots programming now travels far beyond our shores, rooted in place, reaching outward. And the next generation, they're already in the frame. Moving Image Arts at GCSE and A-level and the BFI's film academies are developing essential skills in teamwork, project management and innovation. Into Film's Screenworks offers hands-on work experience. The Creative Learning Centres empower schools, youth and community groups with digital age creativity. Aspiration is becoming action. All of it connected, from first spark to final frame. Across communities, across borders, across these islands. A screen industry with global ambition, local heart, and built on partnership, where every voice has its place.
The International Emmy for Comedy goes to Dairy Girls Season 3.
The Oscar goes to An Irish Goodbye.
And the BAFTA goes to Clive Murray's Caribbean Adventure.
Thank you, BAFTA. I'd also like to thank Alley Catch TV, The Indie That Roared, and Northern Ireland Screen, supporting this programme.
The BAFTA goes to Blue Lights.
Thank you to the people of our home city for letting us tell your stories. Belfast, this one's for you.
Give me strength.
This is Northern Ireland Screen's full picture. Made locally, sold globally.
Grab a weapon, quick!
We're ready for an exorcism, maybe?
And that's what we're going to talk about. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this morning's session, getting you out of the rain as well. As you know, it's Belfast, from here to everywhere, heaven included. So our focus for the next 45 minutes is on the creative industries, focus on Belfast particularly, which I hope will prompt your own experiences in terms of similarities, whether those are successes or challenges. But we want to talk about the landscape. We want to talk about the stories that are told, the people who tell them, the people behind them, and what makes it uniquely different. What makes Belfast uniquely different? What do we mean by local identity and homegrown storytelling in that context? And how do producers get their projects over the line? We want to cover that distance between development and green light, while we look at some of the potholes that can often line that road. So I'm delighted and relieved, I have to say in equal measure, that I have 4 industry members with me here on stage, all of whom bring their own observations and experience. And I'm going to get you to introduce yourselves, but Andrew, you're kind of a step ahead because we learned quite a bit from that clip. Tell us a bit about who you are, what you do.
Andrew Reid, I'm the Chief Content Officer at Northern Ireland Screen, and I just lurk in the shadows. That's what I do, and just let everybody else do all the wonderful stuff that you see. So, and I have to stress that we're Northern Ireland Screen, so it's not just Belfast. It is all of Northern Ireland. So Derry, obviously, we have our colleagues from in Big Mountain down in Newry. The industry is spread across, and we're working hard to make sure that the Greater Belfast area it's not just Greater Belfast. It's all of Northern Ireland.
And we're kind of using it as a model in a
sense.
Yeah. Yeah, but I am conscious, and I think that is important to point out early on.
So my name's Fiona Campbell. I'm the Director of Factual Television at the BBC, which covers documentaries, arts, science, history, natural history, and the Storyville International Documentary Strand. I live in Belfast. For people who don't know me, I was born and brought up here. I came back here the year before COVID, so I was at 5 or 6 years. I've been back here. Then I was head of BBC 3 and have worked very closely with Eddie Doyle in Northern Ireland to bring co-productions, co-commissions and new opportunities to Northern Ireland.
And that's kind of what we want to explore as well.
Cathy, I'm Chris Jones. I run a small indie in Belfast called Nice One Productions. And Nice One was set up 7 or 8 years ago on a kind of mission with a purpose to find and create and collaborate with producers here and across the water who could create new Irish comedy entertainment. Do you see what I did there with the kind of the nice thing? So that's been the kind of plan. And then the other job that I do, I'm really lucky to be also involved as a freelance executive producer on Mastermind. So it's been here since 2019, since Hat Trick won the tender to produce it. And it was lovely to see 2 quiz clips that I've been involved in on the Northern Ireland Screen showreel, because we do Mastermind here and we also do The Finish Line here, which is a BBC daytime high volume quiz as well. It's been doing quite well.
So I suspect there'll be questionnaires going around the audience as you recruit more people for Mastermind.
I'd be circulating application forms. Cathy, I want to talk to you about your radio show in Scotland too, just to kind of get the word out for us.
I think we can chat about that.
We can talk about that later, hopefully.
While we negotiate a ticket for the interview with Lisa McGee that Miriam O'Callaghan is doing tomorrow afternoon. So kind of hoping I get a ticket for that. If anyone has, I think you can stay behind.
Hi, Cathy. So my name is Fionnuala Deane, and I'm the Managing Director of Dog Ears. We describe our company as a children's content company or children's media company, and that originally it was set up as a publishing house for children. That was my background. Before I set up the company, I worked in a publishing company, and very quickly we learned that books are fantastic, but if we wanted to tell stories, we had to embrace different platforms. So really quickly we started doing animation, we've made digital games, we've run events, we've done all sorts of mental things, I think, quite frankly, over the last 15, 16 years. We're probably best known for the animated series Puff and Rock, and we also recently launched a show called My Brother the Minotaur on Apple TV. So it's been a crazy ride, and we're based in Derry, absolutely. Well done, Andrew, for catching yourself and saying it's beyond Belfast, absolutely, yeah.
I was catching the whole thing there, really, on that.
So, yeah.
So there's a snapshot of our panel. Will you please welcome them? Andrew, I mean, I suppose we're looking in, you know, and I say as someone who lives in Scotland and making comparison with the industry, what we're seeing is, you know, you're very successful as a production and as a development hub too. Has that been something that's been gradual? Have you had to work on that? And is that a true reflection of the state of the industry?
Yeah, well, has been gradual. No, I mean, it's, you know, like any sort of seemingly overnight success. It's, you know, it's been a 30-year project to get to this point. And it's, you know, it's all about, it is about the talent. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's got to be, at the beginning of anything, it's, you know, it's more people coming in, but making sure that people are working with them to step up and crews and things. And it's trying to sort of help, you know, aspiring producers get, you know, sort of build their credibility around. So, you know, bringing in co-productions, working with companies to pair them up with the right sort of people. But effectively, where we want to get, you know, we want to shift that balance from, you know, from the incoming to the indigenous. And in scripted, sort of about 3 or 4 years ago, we saw, well, actually 4 years ago, we saw a shift where the short filmmakers, the writers, directors, producers who'd been working on the short films, were suddenly the writers, directors, and producers who were working on the TV dramas, both the productions that were coming in, but also obviously the ones so that you've got the sort of, you know, sort of the two cities with blue lights, but also on all of the incoming TV dramas that we were supporting, they were then taking up. And, you know, the knock-on effect of that is, you know, we moved a sector that had been worth £75 million in the previous strategy to doubling its value to £150 million to the local economy in the next strategy. And that's because the people who are leading those shows are making, in my opinion, the right decisions, because they're going, right, okay, we're going to bring in these OTDs, we're going to bring in, and those OTDs being local and working with local talent will bring in more local, and it just, you know, it's that trickle-down effect. And so that's what we've got to do with each of the sectors. And each of the sectors are building up. And, you know, Ed Stowe is already running out, and I can't believe I've been talking for 30 seconds. Clive, at least we acknowledge Clive Myrie. At least he was here for that. That's the most important thing.
He was a plan.
Yeah, he was a plan. That's it. He was supposed to ask the first question. It was supposed to be really flattering as well. But yeah, and that's what we try to do with each sector. But we only work with the talent that's there. So, you know, so in the animation, so we have an incredibly talented animation sector. But, you know, and that's because the people are there to drive and make the right decisions and bring them, develop that talent and bring those people through. And you know, it's always about making, you know, any success is about making the right decisions and bringing the people, the groups along with it. So, you know, you can't expect decision makers to take flying chances. Most people who are in a decision-making process have climbed some form of corporate ladder and they are perching on it. So you've got to try and support them as much as possible. But you've got to give them you've got to help them find the right people who are going to help them make a success of that. And then the confidence comes with that. And that's what you see. You're seeing a sort of a growth of confidence within it.
So it's reputational, which is hugely important.
And talented people. You know, that's
and the talent. Yeah. But there will be shows that will have been transformative. So you don't have to keep explaining yourself because, you know, I'm thinking of Game of Thrones, for example. Yeah. And then when that happens, presumably it's like a kind of stone rolling down a hill.
No, absolutely, yeah.
And maximising on what it gathers.
And you know, sort of it is that sort of rising tide lifting all boats. Yeah. You know, so it's when hopefully in most genres when somebody walks in to meet somebody the first time and they say, oh, we work in Northern Ireland. Oh, right. Well, what do they do in Northern Ireland? There's now enough things like, oh, well, we have Finish Line, we have Puff and Rock, we have, you know, whatever it is that helps bolster them up and give confidence that, you know, there is the talent here to deliver the projects to the right quality and the right budget, you know, sort of, it's all of those things. But we can only, Northern Ireland Screen can only support that. We can't create that. That is created by the individuals who go out and step into those rooms and make those pitches and deliver that. And then we can come in with well, actually we can help make it a bit cheaper. We can help you find the right crew. We're only a support service to the talent that actually goes in.
It's like that scaffolding, isn't it, really, for them? But then, you know, it's getting them commissioned, and that's the big stumbling block. I'm thinking of broadcasters like the BBC or Channel 4 or whomever. What can the BBC, for example, do to encourage and to nurture talent? And specifically someone like you who has grown up here, who knows that local talent and what that means.
One other thing to note about Northern Ireland, it has a great history of journalism, you know, from BBC Northern Ireland, from UTV, from print. And that is decades of journalists who have passed on that knowledge. And I think that has really helped the documentary sector here, and also led to a number of companies being set up by people with journalistic backgrounds. And that means for network producers or for streamers, you're dealing with people who are very journalistically experienced and very across. In order to take risks to make difficult content, they know what they're doing. So, you know, with Double Band made Teen Predator box set for us, which was on a very, it was an ongoing live court case, catfish court case, we found very complex. But you knew that that content was going to be in safe journalistic hands and well managed. So I really, because obviously I work, you know, pan-UK and suppliers across the globe, but I really see the quality of the Northern Ireland journalism in the factual content that we make. But having Northern Ireland Screen is a huge benefit. So through the years, we've also experimented with one-off documentaries. You know, we've done various competitive pitches in partnership with BBC Northern Ireland, and, you know, Ali Katz pitched, you know, Double Band pitched, Strident pitched, and for example, Strident came forth with a young guy called James Blake, who was not a journalist. He was basically a young entrepreneur who had an extraordinary personal story of being catfished himself. So as I say, he wasn't a journalist. He was from Lisburn, working, he'd say himself, a working class lad. And he is a very authentic young male voice. And he's not from Belfast, you know, he's from Lisburn. And Strident brought him forward to us, and I could see he was an original young voice that you don't see much of in the UK, never mind from Northern Ireland. And working with Northern Ireland Screen, we've now done 3 documentaries with him. And there's the last one being Inside the Manosphere, which went out months ahead of the Louis Theroux one. And I have to say, it is consistently finding an audience on BBC iPlayer. And I'm very proud of that example of somebody who's an original young male voice, working class background, who we're consistently bringing to with a local company, who we're bringing to audiences. So, you know, getting anything commissioned, as everybody in this room will know, is difficult. Yeah. You know, the times are very difficult. Winning a commission is a project, but we're just trying to create pathways. Now, you know, which I can talk about later, our focus is on you know, we're doing some YouTube commissioning, so it's for YouTube and iPlayer, and we're doing those in partnership with BBC Northern Ireland, BBC Scotland, BBC Wales, and that's going to be the new pathway for new talent to come through, because we're doing those at volume, and because they're lower budget, you're de-risking it to some extent, the opportunity. Yeah.
But of course, you know, and when you are handling a new talent, obviously there is that duty of care too, isn't there?
Yeah.
For you as broadcasters, or indeed as producers as well. I'll come back to some of the points you raised there, Fiona, but for you, Chris, what's been your experience? You know, in terms of, you know, we've talked a bit about trust, I suppose, and the importance of nurturing a relationship, surely.
Oh, completely. I think, again, I would doff my cap proverbially to both Northern Ireland Screen and the BBC on behalf of the small indie community. The Northern Ireland Screen Development Slate funding and the BBC Small Indie funding have absolutely opened all sorts of doors for a small indie who just don't have a distributor to pay all the bills. And I think there's an old saying that somebody told me ages ago that, you know, vision without funding is just a hallucination.
That's very good.
So actually, it's really about the funding. There's never been any doubt about Northern Ireland not having ideas and talent. But what it takes is funding and decision makers who can begin to get behind the producers here. And I've seen that on behalf of Nice One. I've absolutely seen that. We've had a really big breakthrough recently where BBC Comedy, through the Small Indie Fund, have commissioned us to do our first BBC One comedy series. And it's a co-production with a London indie, a brilliant company called Birdie Productions. It's written by Daniel Peake, who's done 100+ episodes of Not Going Out. And with cooperation from the Small Indie Fund and Northern Ireland Screen, we've been able to bring in a bunch of new Northern Irish writers. And we just announced a couple of weeks ago that Jamie Lee O'Donnell is going to star in it. So can you imagine the excitement in our little office whenever that news comes through? And that news doesn't come through without lots of work, without lots of resilience, and without ultimately lots of funding from the BBC and from Northern Ireland Screen. So I think that that's the key to it. You have to keep showing up. You have to use the funding wisely. And for all the producers in this room, I think that's the big thing. Just because you're a small indie doesn't mean to say you can't think big. That's always been the kind of the nice one approach.
Which is what we're seeing here at the Celtic Media Festival. And I hope that is encouraging to all, that it's not about size or whatever, it's about the stories, about the ideas.
Size isn't important. That's a good phrase to have in your head as well, Cathy. Thanks for that.
Fionnuala.
I did say I worked in new comedy, so, you know.
I know. He warned me about banana skins too. He didn't tell me where they might be. Fionnuala, you came from publishing. You come from a publishing background as well. So again, children's media. So in a sense, that's, I suppose it's called niche in a sense, that's your focus. What are the challenges that you have as, you know, part of that sector that is constantly evolving too? And I'm not talking about proximity, I'm talking really about getting commissions, getting them over the line.
I think the biggest challenge at the minute is, where do kids watch content? They're not watching traditional TV anymore, they're watching phones, they're watching on tablets, and so that has changed the landscape really quickly, I think, in the last 5 to 10 years. But the thing that I am determined that we're going to try and focus on is making the best shows that we can so that they can find them wherever that may be. We have been incredibly lucky over the last 10 years with the relationships that we have with broadcasters. Last year, we entered a new partnership with the BBC, through CBeebies, for picking up Puff and Rock for season 3 and the full back catalogue. And that has been kind of transformative for us, to be honest with you. Puff and Rock was also a global, we had a global deal with Netflix from 2015, which we're hoping to renew again really soon. And we're going to make some more content for that as well. So a lot of luck, a lot of sort of determination. I think the other thing is we're trying to tell stories of quality. And there's a big responsibility, I think, when you're making content for children especially. You know, you're making cartoons, right? We're not going to blow it up and say that it's anything. There's no massive journalistic integrity or whatever. But I think the stories that we tell our children are really, really important. And if you do that well, and if you do that with quality, then those stories will travel, and there will be a universality to it, you know, and they will sell. And the best of them, I think, will have an enduring appeal as well.
And in a sense, does that mean that you can use, you know, if you draw from your own culture, as opposed to taking stories that are, okay, they're new writing, but there would be someone else's new writing. Whereas if you draw from your own culture, then you have that something that is meaningful to other cultures in that they will have something similar. Oh. So in a sense, if you, and I'm thinking of something like Lagan, for example, which I remember from a couple of years back, and how important it is that we are hearing those stories, but that they are relatable and relevant to a new audience.
I'll talk a bit about our new show on Apple TV called My Brother the Minotaur, and it was created by a guy who was working with us called Donald worked with us as an animator on season 2 of Puff and Rock, and he had this idea, he had this concept, which was basically a scribble of a boy who had a head of a bull, right? And with NI Screen funding from the Creative Animation Scheme, we put together a pitch bible, we did a little teaser trailer, and we started the process of pitching it around. We have been working a long time with Cartoon Saloon based in Kilkenny, and we convinced them, will you help us develop this and co-produce it? But that story didn't exist. And over a period from 2016 to 2019, we just went deep into this notion of what would be the story that we'd want to tell for this age group. So it's 8+. We were completely supported by Northern Ireland Screen. We also got Creative Europe money at the time. God bless Creative Europe. I know, a moment's silence. But, you know, whenever you have those pots of money, just to allow people to have a bit of fun, to think about stories which are engaging. And we were just a lot of luck, but also a lot of absolute determination. And we pitched it, first of all, to Netflix. We thought Netflix were going to want it. And then they turned us down at the last minute. It was heartbreaking because we went over to LA and we were like, you know, they told us 6 months previously, if you'd make these, and these changes, we're in. And they said, actually, no, it's gone too old now. We don't like it anymore. And in that moment, we thought, oh my God, we've just, right, we're bankrupt now. It's over. Forget about it. We're done. But in the same week, we had a meeting with Apple and we went and pitched it to Tara Sorensen. And he was like, okay, this is really interesting. I'll help you develop it a bit further. So having the courage to tell those stories, as I was saying to Fiona outside, there's a certain degree of insanity with having this kind of a lifestyle, you know, because you just don't know what's going to happen.
You need to be obsessed, don't you? You need to be slightly obsessive, which is a good thing. You know.
I mean, there was no company that I could join whenever I decided, right, so I had to set up my own.
Yeah.
And that's what happens, I think, with a lot of people who are in the sort of creative space. If you want to do something, you end up having to do it yourself for the most part, because nobody's going to come and rescue you and make it easier.
And I think that's, in a sense, without any kind of, if you didn't have any infrastructure, then what do you do? Where do you go? You can have the good ideas, and you can have plenty of people say, well, try this, try that, but if it's not there and if there isn't a clear route, then you don't even know how to apply for funding.
But I can just pick up on the creative animation scheme. That's really a good example of, you know, we it has two parts to it, if you like. One is, obviously, we want to sort of help companies to develop something new. But actually what we're really trying to do is get the companies to look inside and see where their talent lies, and give somebody who's not part of the management or the pitching process the chance to step up and make something and say, look, I've got this character, I've got these ideas. And you know, in our wildest dreams, did we think we would end up with 2 seasons on Apple TV from Donald's sort of initial sketch or whatever? But that's that's the point. Is, you know, so we've always got to look internally. We've always got to look to see where's that emerging talent come from, and it's not always going to be, no offense, at the top of the company is going to shepherd and guide that talent, but it's encouraging more established people to step back and look at who's coming through, and how can we build them up and take them forward. And there's two sides to that. One is the obviously the quite right talent development side of things, and that is hugely important. We live and die on the ideas that come forward, and we have to accept, you know, talent can come from anywhere, and we have to be willing to look at that. But the other side of it is actually looking to the companies and going, you're going to die if you don't embrace the talent that's coming, that's within. They are going to go and set up their own company, and you are creating your own competition. So you have to develop your own people. You have to keep them close. You have to find an equitable and supportive network or way of working with them that means that when they have an idea, they come to you and they don't go somewhere else with it. That's going to, you know, so it's building up that ecosystem where,
because they will migrate maybe to the cities, for example, if they're based rurally.
Or just go to your competition. If your competition is just more open and treats its talent better, that's where they will go. So, you know, it's the creative animation scheme and other schemes that we do is about helping companies or encouraging companies to look at that talent and nurture it and finding that way of working with them. You know, and we certainly we hoped it would become, but we never thought for a million. But that's the tribute to Dog Ears, is that they work with talent in such a way that talent wants to work with them.
And I wanted to ask Fiona about Made of Here, the BBC campaign, and how that, you know, the trickle-down effect from that, and how effective it is, and how it kind of meets some of the questions about everything being, for example, London-based.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of thinking and emphasis goes into, you know, production out of London, and the BBC's endlessly increasing its commitment to produce. You know, I think it's over 2/3 of production now out of London. But it's how do you show that to an audience in a way that isn't a dry report or a speech that they're just never going to come across. So our creative brand team came up with the Made of Here campaign because we know that when content that portrays a place well is broadcast, it overperforms in the area in which it originates. Often stuff that overperforms in Northern Ireland will also overperform in Scotland. There's a sort of common sense of sensibilities there. So we knew that kind of campaign that lent into the sense of place should cut through. So the Made of Here campaign was born, and everybody that was seeing the Titanic drone lights, and that is now going to move through other parts of the UK. They're measuring it. I mean, it's had huge reach on digital social media, so that is a significant success. And if you're in Northern Ireland, I mean, the number of people who were sharing that and sending around was off, in a very short space of time, was off the scale. So, and it was on a back of a great piece of content, the Titanic sings tonight. from Stellify, which had done so well. So it all tied up really well to the actual content plan too.
And it's your story being told by you, and I think that's what's central to this. There will be challenges, though, and I wonder what those challenges can be. And sometimes they can be how we are seen. You know, this idea of, I'm not necessarily saying othering, but if you have agency over your own story, then that's fine. But when you don't, do you want to comment on that, Chris?
Well, I was just going to chip in with Fiona's point about it's just about visibility, I think, as much as anything else. And that old thing of if you can see it, you can be it. So I love seeing the Made of Here billboards. And I texted Kieran and Stellify to go, you know, there's billboards at your Titanic show all around the town. And I think that's the thing, like from a visibility of shows that aren't necessarily portraying here, I like that Mastermind and The Finish Line are shows that a lot of people know are made here. And I like the idea that you could be working in Belfast on a studio quiz, you know, and that does a different sort of job. It's not about portraying all the contestants are from Northern Ireland. I feel a bit like I'm on Mastermind here with these lights, by the way. I don't know if you're thinking the same thing. So, like, I think that's part of it, isn't it? Just like showing the audience that they can get involved.
But can you become a victim of your own success too? You know, in some ways. So that, and I'm thinking, if you have these wonderful locations, you have these wonderful studio spaces, what happens if people say, yeah, we'll have them, but we'll bring our own crew? You know, how much of that can change? Can you change?
Well, the good thing is budgets tend to dictate that as well. So, but so in our scripted work, and more in factual and animation, there are, well, first things first, we put our funding is tied to economic return. So, and that's very much defined around residency in Northern Ireland, so people who are resident here. But we also sort of have clauses in our agreements where effectively productions have to we have sort of 9 sort of key HODs. And we sort of said, well, 7 of you can bring in 2, but we want 7 of those to be from. And again, it's that trickle-down effect. The more heads of department, the more those key decision makers who are resident in Northern Ireland, they know the locals. They're bought into the training and the skills. And you know, if you make the right decisions, everything else trickles down. So we do we do have and we do penalise people who make the wrong choice. You know, you can bring in. You can choose not to do that. But if you want to maximise our funding, then you will hit those targets, and you will bring on training. So we directly employ trainees that we then place on those projects. We step people up, you know, people whose mid-level careers who are ready to step up to higher grades. We fund that stepping up. So there's a whole support mechanism around it. So the first thing is, if you bring a production here, or if you produce here, you're expected to spend the money here. And then there are the making sure the right decision makers are in place, and then bringing up the next generation. So there are mitigations around that. Those who work against us, we just don't fund.
Okay, and I suppose in these economically strained times, you know, that then becomes very real. You know, because people won't really have a choice. It's not as if to say, well, we want to bring in our own.
Well, you also have to look
whatever.
If they are incoming productions.
Yeah.
As I said,
and the bigger ones,
more and more of those. If a production's coming in, more and more of them are using local producers, writers, directors. Anyway, again, those right decisions. But
do they offer training, or do you support them in terms of?
Oh no,
training?
Well, it's part of our. So there are there are 4 things that we look for. We look, you will, if you take our funding, you will spend money in Northern Ireland. There's an agreed amount, agreed floor, not an agreed ceiling. You will engage with our skills and training. You will step people up, so CPD will be part of it, and we have sustainability criteria, so you'll fit the sustainability criteria. So that's the basic requirement, and if they're not prepared to work with that, then we don't fund them. It's as simple as that. And you know, we're not looking to fund everything that happens in Northern Ireland, but we want to fund the projects that are going to make a difference in Northern Ireland. But we're also with the more production comes across all genres that exist, we want that balance of incoming to indigenously created. We want that to change over. And portrayal is a word that a lot of that's bandied around. I mean, I don't want portrayal. I want representation.
Yeah.
That's a different matter. I want Northern Ireland creatives to be telling their own stories. I don't want companies from outside of Northern Ireland choosing to portray us on screen. I want the people of Northern Ireland representing themselves on screen. And there's a difference in that. There's a difference it's just a nuance in the way of thinking.
But I think it's a very important one, and we see that with documentaries in particular, where the people are telling the stories rather than a historical sort of, voiceover, for example, giving voice to. The emphasis now is on my story, my experience, where is possible, obviously. But, I suppose the fight is how do you get Indigenous projects off the ground for you two as independent producers? What would change that, make that process easier? I mean, aside from funding, because, we haven't got a magic money tree, do we?
If we knew the definitive answer to that, Fionnuala, we'd be really happy about that. I mean, it's characters and stories. It comes down to idea, always, I think, And I think when you look at the hits of recent times that have come from the 6 counties, things like Blue Lights, you just think, what a brilliant idea, what a brilliant set of characters, and what a brilliant new take on what it's like to be in the police over here. Derry Girls just blew the doors off in terms of, for a long time, people would have said, you can't even have a Northern Irish accent on national television, let alone a Derry accent, So,
Careful.
Absolutely, some of my best friends are from Derry.
That's too late.
But that's the thing. It comes down to it's that energy and that alchemy and that magic thing of, character story. Don't you think?
I do, yeah. I think also, no, I agree with you. I also think there's, you have to be practical too. As much as the story and the characters are central to everything, you have to be a wee bit crafty to try and get something made. And you have to try and utilise as many opportunities as are available. So you have to have your finger on the pulse for all sorts of funding streams. Soft money. You have to be chasing that stuff all the time. We work a lot across border. So we work a lot with Cartoonstone, have done for years. And it's creatively brilliant, but also financially makes sense that you're utilising 2 sets of screen agencies, 2 sets of tax breaks. You're in the same time zone. There's sort of really practical things that you can drive and you can have a conversation. If there's a panic about something, you can meet in person. And it means that we can we used to describe it whenever we were developing the Minotaur project with Donald, that he used to go between Derry and Kilkenny all the time, so we were sort of co-parenting him. Because we were kind of trying to nurture him, and
Zoom's made that easier, hasn't it?
It has.
Zoom has really...
When it works.
Well, when it works, of course, yeah. Your Wi-Fi was a bit dodgy earlier in the week, wasn't it, Campbell?
It was.
Fully outed here.
But crafty and practicality too, and just chasing every single thing. And realising, I think, that the structure of how things are going to be paid for is going to be more co-production in the future.
Totally.
And companies are going to have to adapt to that, whether they like it or not.
And faith from commissioners and broadcasters, Having the presence of Fiona in Northern Ireland is a big plus. It used to be, I'm old enough to remember, everybody had to fly over to London to do the meetings. And many
now I've sent to London people, I'm in Belfast.
All the colleagues I work with, I share with them happily, Fiona, property websites. Kind of say, would you not move over here? Because it's lovely and it's great and the education system's better and, the weather's brilliant.
But that is, we need more Fionas in the nation.
We do.
In the nation.
Here. Here.
The reality is that more of that decision-making power has to come out. And obviously there was the move to Manchester for the BBC, and obviously Channel 4 has moved out. But the reality is, it needs to be more. It needs to be spread into. Wales needs representation. Scotland needs representation. Northern Ireland absolutely needs representation. And having decision makers who are of and from those nations makes absolutely having Fiona makes a difference.
It's even simple things like, I'm sitting in an iPlayer meeting and Peelers is coming up through the planning spreadsheets, and of course everybody's looking at it going, processing, has anybody seen this yet? What is this? And I go, I know what this is, and this is going to be good, so you need to give it good promotion, on the platform.
Absolutely.
And it's because you're closer, obviously, to those stories. You understand the story.
Yeah, and it's that local identity, really, isn't it?
But it's also, large organisations, not necessarily in one broadcaster, but large organisations generate groupthink. You know, there's a culture, and if you take people outside of that, and let other ideas permeate in, you know, that's what we are incredibly lucky here. And the controversial thing I'm going to say, to have Eddie Doyle. Eddie Doyle is the most entrepreneurial. He doesn't not necessarily all the right way all the time, but he is the most entrepreneurial.
He's great to work with. We've done a lot together.
He really is, and you know, he goes out. He tries to piece together things in ways that we just don't see other commissioning teams do. So we are absolutely lucky to have you know, somebody effectively an independent producer who's actually running commissioning in Northern Ireland. You know, at least he's trying to put the things together. So you know, having more power outside of that sort of central central block in all broadcasters. It's not just the BBC, across the board.
Exactly, the BBC can't do it all. But I would say, you know, we are moving to pan-UK commissioning model, whereby, you know, the commissioning teams in BBC Scotland, in Wales, in Northern Ireland, are in the meetings. Everybody's in the same development meetings. Everybody's in the same commissioning pitch meeting together. And that has the power, because the co-commissioning money, you know, Scotland has their money to back their producers on a certain title that they believe in. That is the power to go further than we have ever done before, and we are putting more and more commissioners out of London than ever before as well. So the next few years are going to be, you know, really, really transformative. And at the same time, we're driving new pipelines of digital video. So there's a lot to, you know, and I obviously go around the whole of the UK, and I meet with a lot of different screen agencies around the UK. And they're all very, I know, but I have to represent everybody, but they're all very jealous. They all would love to be able to mimic the success of Northern Ireland Screen, and I just think it's a really precious thing for us to have here that works successfully. Yeah.
But I mean, to Fionnula's point about the cross-border, you know, we are the only part of the UK that shares a border with another territory in taxation terms. You know, and we have, you know, Screen Ireland are great partners, particularly. There are so many genres or sectors within the screen industries. That's, you know, so that's, you know, not everything works perfectly with everything, but certainly in scripted, certainly in independent film, in television drama, in animation, and in gaming. That, you know, there are the tax credits in Europe are designed to mesh together. They're specifically designed. So we have that capability. We are, you know, an hour and a half's drive from, you know, the capital city of another territory that we can co-produce with. That is not the case in the rest of the UK. You know, Northern Ireland has this real opportunity there. We have partners in Screen Ireland who are, you know, very open to co-development and cross-border production. We have colleagues in Ardan who are doing the same in the game sector. You know, it's well established in that, and animation is the exemplar in this. It works very well in independent film. We want to see it better in TV drama, and in the game sector, there's a real opportunity for the game sector to work on a much more collaborative All Ireland basis, and that's a huge pitch for Northern Ireland.
Do you want to send me that housing brochure?
I've got a bunch of them.
Yeah. From what you've said, I think we've had a couple of minutes. I mean, thank you. That was amazing, and I've really left very little time for what may be questions. Do we have any hands raised? We've lost our plant. No, he wasn't really a plant. He just came to noise us up. But do we have any questions? Anyone maybe, you know, recognizing similar stories or kind of similar challenges? Anything? No, it was very quiet. Must have been a tough night.
Have they been there all along? I didn't see them. Have they been there all along? Because they've been very quiet. I didn't realise it was live.
You could plug your radio show, Cathy.
No.
Cathy has a radio show that you all need to
yes.
hear.
Did I see somebody's hand going? Yes, they did. Thank you. Just introduce yourself and then,
Parrot from Tiger Lily in Glasgow. I just wanted to ask Fiona to just elaborate a bit on the commissioning from, as in someone like Louise will be at the meetings and things like that. How would that work?
Yeah. So is David here? Yes. So David Harron is in Louise's team. Oh, you don't have a microphone, but basically David has already joined, for example, the documentary development meetings with the network team, as will somebody from Northern Ireland, somebody from Wales. So that means that from the beginning of the pipe, you know, Louise's commissioners, Eddie's commissioners, Nick's commissioners can be putting the ideas from the local companies in that genre into the pipe at the very top. Whereas before it was more ideas could come along a bit further down the development decision path, if that makes sense. So because it's all basically one UK team together, and then it will then get, you know, could be co-developed and co-commissioned and co-funded, and the BBC's committed to £100 million in that. Well, we are calling it portrayal funding, but it's the same. You know, David's not going to commission a Belfast indie to make. Well, maybe you will, but I don't think they make films about Glasgow, for example. Do you know what I mean? Part of the nation's interest is to support their local sector. Is that fair enough, David? Have you anything else to?
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, the whole idea to get very much involved in these kind of network meetings and discussions.
Yeah, use the mic. Brilliant, thanks.
Yeah, hopefully, hopefully what that does mean is that, having kind of commissioners from the nations actually at the table, as Fiona says at the start of the process, means that, that's hopefully going to be a real positive in the kind of medium term for production companies in the nations, because there's, it's harder to kind of ignore the nations when we're there at the table.
Yeah, and the full spread of ideas is in there at the very beginning, if that makes sense. So it's easier to, make decisions, seeing everything. It's greater transparency, I think, and then backed by the money, which always helps. And I would just add, in case there's anybody who makes films for disclosure, as in for Nations Current Affairs, they are doing really well on iPlayer. I watched Charmaine and the Prophet last night. It was really good. And so that's just another really good opportunity, because at the end of the day, it all ends up on iPlayer, and if it performs well, the algorithms serve it up more and more and more. So Nations Current Affairs commissions are as good as any other commission.
Thank you very much indeed. I think that's kind of it. I would just like to say all of these, whether it's via the iPlayer or indeed opportunities here, while you're here, to see some of the incredible programmes that have come through. I think 500 entries altogether. And, we just get a snapshot during the awards hour, but really I would recommend you all to get avail yourselves of the opportunity if you can, or afterwards even, because they truly are remarkable, as are my panel. Would you put your hands together, please? Thank you. And thank you so much for your time this morning.